I'd like to give you some important information about the upcoming national census in 2021. In the upcoming days, the National Office for Statistics will be sending out letters to each and every one of us. Within these letters, you'll find the necessary information to access the forms online and find all the other information required to fill out these forms. Once you have your letter, you can go to your local community centre so that we can help you fill out these forms. We at our Genovese and our cultural centres are here ready to help you. If you require any other information, you can call in. Thank you.
Good evening, our dear viewers, and welcome to the IAKM and Genovese Studios online broadcast. This evening, me and my guests will be having a discussion about a very important topic for Alevis, which is the 2021 census. I hope that the programme will be useful for the younger generation, especially where they will be able to gain some knowledge about the census. So I'm going to introduce my guests now. I have Ali Arslan with us this evening. He is a student at Imperial College London, currently doing a PhD, and his research is in fluid dynamics, and I believe he's currently in his second year. And he's also a committee member for the Alevi Youth Federation. So before I start, I just want to remind everyone that this will only be a short programme, but if there are any questions that any of our dear viewers, if any of you have any questions, please do send it to us via the chat function. I'll be keeping an eye on there, and I'll be asking any questions that we do receive given the time limit that we have. So I'm going to immediately start off with the first question, Ali. Hope you're well. Why should we take part in the census? That's our first question. Would you like to answer that firstly?
Yeah, well, so thank you for having me, first of all. But the question of the census is an important one. Every 10 years, the census comes around. And no matter sort of who you are, to be included in the census is a sort of key part of being recognized and being acknowledged in, the society we live in. Yeah. Obviously, we as an individual, we want to have certain rights, and that those rights come with in particular with representation. And the census sort of allows you to be represented and counted as someone that lives here in the UK. So it's an important part of our lives. And the censuses are very common. These aren't uncommon events. It's not something unique to this year. They happen throughout history. They've happened every 10 years in every country, and they're an important part of our sort of society today, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you there. And also, like, touching on what you said, like within societies, people they have traditions which they live by, whether it be religion or the language they speak, that their parents speak, and it's these traditions that sort of shape our identity and essentially make who we are today. And so taking part in the census is therefore a chance for the Alevi faith to kind of state who they are. So next question is, what is the significance of the census for us Alevis living in the UK? Why do we support and care about this population census so much? Would you like to start off with that?
Yeah, so this is of course the key question, the key point of us doing this today, and that's why in particular for Alevis is this a significant census to take part in, and why is it a significant census to be clear about our position, our belief, and our religion in society. And maybe some of the younger generation might not be as aware of some of the struggles that the Alevi community has faced in the past. I mean, in the past 50 years, even so, in the lifetime of Alevis and society really developing to what it is today, we as Alevis have faced quite a significant amount of persecution and oppression, especially from the countries from which we have migrated from.
Yeah.
Those being Turkey, of course, that being Turkey.
Mhm.
And well, now that we're in a position, a situation where we've had to leave that country for predominantly sort of economic and political reasons, now that we are in a position where we have a bit more freedom with regards to liberty, with regards to expression, freedom of speech, um, it's sort of a very important time to take a stand and make sure that, as well as us having this economic freedom, this freedom of speech, it's time for us to be able to say to those in power and those that are governing here in the UK that Alevis are a significant part of your population that you should care about.
Yeah.
And defending and standing up for minority rights is, of course, a very important part of society. And it's an important position for people to have. But you can't sort of stand up for a minority if you don't know that they exist. And I mean, I'm sure we all come across this when we speak to people. Maybe it can be something as simple as you going to your local council for something very minor. But when you say that you're an Alavi, maybe 80% of the time they won't know what that is, and they'll be curious. Most of the time those people will want to know, but them not knowing shows to you that, to an extent, even though the Alavi population is not insignificant, that the
Mhm.
Alavi population hasn't been as outspoken with
Yeah.
regards to their fundamental belief and culture. And that's an important thing to sort of make
Yeah.
aware, and this is one way that we can do this.
I'm going to touch on that point later, actually, with one of the other questions that I have. And touching on, what you said about, like around the world, I think it's important to sort of realize that many institutions, not only the Alavi Federation here and IAKM and GEMIVI, this is also, other institutions around the world where the Alavi faith gather. An important aim of these places is to make sure that the Alavi faith will carry on in the future generations and essentially not be lost. And the reason why it's so important, this population census for us, is, because we're not on official records. And, if we are put on official records, we will definitely be sort of more recognised, as you touched on.
Yeah,
So,
so obviously, as Alavis and as what we try to do with the community center and the federation in making Alavism accessible to younger generations, in continuing the tradition, the census isn't going to be the end of this, but it's an
mhm,
important first stage of
yeah,
ensuring that on a community level, so not just on the level of our community, but in the wider community, that Alavis
definitely,
have some recognition, and that's an important first step to take.
yeah. Definitely. No, I definitely agree with you there. So next question is, I think it's, it'll be useful to sort of give more general advice about the census. So how should the forms be filled out? And, what should we write in the religion section? So would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, so of course the census is filled out on the basis of where you live,
Yeah.
sort of identifies where you live, and that's where it starts off at.
Hmm.
And I mean, I guess things to be aware of is, of course, not everything in the census is compulsory. So there are
Hmm.
certain parts of the census that you do not have to fill in,
Yeah.
whether these be to do with your own particular choices of gender, sexuality, etc. These are
Yeah.
things that you don't have to fill in.
Yeah.
Um, and technically, I think religion and ethnicity can come underneath this. But for us, it's very important. And when it comes to the section on religion, I mean, you do still have to click click on other, and
Hmm.
then once you do that, you'll eventually be given an option to write something into a box, and then when you write Alavi, you'll get the option of Alavi appearing, and then you confirm that option, and then that becomes the sort of choice you make for your religion.
Yeah. And,
And that's the important
we
step.
urge people to be doing that, obviously. So I think the next question is also, more kind of general advice. Is there a fine for incorrect information put in the forms or for not completing the forms at all? I think I'll start off with that one.
Mhm.
It is compulsory, to take part in the population consensus. Um, you know, when you go onto the official Census website, it does state there on the first page that you must complete the census by law. Every householder at an address in the UK is responsible for filling out the form for themselves and for members of the household, or to make sure that members in the household do complete their own forms. The normal time frame to fill out the form is, I'm sure as you're aware, is the 21st of March. This is like the first deadline, shall we put it. After that, if the forms are not filled out, then a warning letter is kind of sent out, and the form does need to be completed as soon as possible after the 21st of March. And correct me if I am wrong, I think if the forms are not completed, then you can be prosecuted and you may have to pay a fine. I believe it's up to £1,000. And also, additionally, on top of that, you have to pay like any court costs. So it could be more than 1,000 actually.
Yeah, exactly. And once this sort of first deadline that you mentioned passes, you'll receive letters that sort of urge you, if you haven't completed it, to fill out the census until that sort of final case. But it is because of sort of the whole situation with the pandemic this year, the past 2 years really. It's much easier to fill it in now than it was before, right? It's much less effort than it was before. I know from the last time it happened, there's obviously a bit of effort of having to fill out by hand a form. You have to read through each question, and it's quite a lot of pages. You have to do it for everyone, right, in the house. But now with phones at our hands, it's super quick, it's super easy. So in terms of effort and time, it's a very small amount, and to fill out. And you know, in case anyone is wondering about, well, how could this be a bad thing, filling out the census? Could my information be used in a negative way? And of course, it is important when you're doing things online to be aware of how your information is being used, for what gains, for what purposes. And in this case, you can sort of read about the regulations. But the amount of information on what can be done by governing bodies, by the police, let's say, with regards to that information is minimal, is near to zero. So that sort of isn't as significant a worry as is made out to be.
And I also think it's important, you know, for people to realise that they can actually fill the form out online via the access code. So it's not just on paper. You can actually complete it online, which I think is very useful. There's a question from one of our viewers, Oka, and she's stated, what should uni students do about the census? Which is actually a question that I had prepared. So I'll quickly answer that, and you can add anything on top. So on the official census website, it states that university students, they need to include both addresses, so both your term time address and also your home address. And you have to do this even if you've left your term time address, say for the Easter break, and you're currently living at home. You still have to include both of the addresses. And the reason why they ask for this is simply because they want to count the population in every area, and the services take into account, you know, the two addresses that the students live in, not just their home address. So that would be the answer to that question for one of our dear viewers. One other question that I sort of spoke about with my friend who was abroad, she said, what if I'm abroad on census day, like will I be able to fill out the form? And that was one of the questions that I looked into. And on the census website, the official census website, it states that if you are away from the UK before the census date, and it is for less than 12 months, then you still have the right to be counted in the census. And they advise that if someone is staying at your household whilst you are abroad, that they complete it for you. Or, as we just said, you can complete it online via your access code. So that's, I think, useful information that our dear viewers should know. So another question that I have is, in what areas and in what ways will our recognition as Alavi benefit us, i.e. education, social life, transport, housing? Ali, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, so I mean, one important thing to make everyone aware of is of course that with recognition within the census of Alavism, um, this brings with it a significant boost to the efforts that we put into Alavism and Alavis being recognized in
Mhm.
schools and in the curriculum. For the
Yeah.
past 10 years, 5 to 10 years, we've made significant steps forward in terms of having included within the curriculum for particular schools Alavism as a part of the religious education lessons given. Right,
Mhm.
as I guess most people would know, the way that or maybe if they don't, let's maybe say that the religious education here in the UK is of course given um, by schools, but the curriculum isn't um, nationally determined. The national curriculum applies to the main subjects of English, maths, science, but the other curriculums can be different for the different boroughs. So, for example, Haringey might have a different RE curriculum to
Mhm.
Enfield.
Yeah.
And with our efforts, we've been able to, for particular schools, primary and secondary, have Alavism be taught within lessons. And of course, so this has involved a process of us working with the schools, us working with the advisory bodies for the curriculum.
Yeah.
However, when we're sort of when we approach these people with regards to saying, well, there are this many Alavi students in your school,
Mhm.
why aren't there any Alavism lessons, etc.? Or students have complained about being an Alavi but sort of being discriminated against within the RE lessons or being put into a particular group, a particular religious group, right?
Yeah.
A lot of Alavis when they, or I mean, I know from my own childhood, I would have been classed as just a Muslim and a follower of Islam, when
Yeah.
in reality, Alavism isn't a denomination of Islam. It's not a sect of Islam. It's an independent religion. And
Mhm.
that recognition, well, if you have the data from the census to be able to say, well, there are this many families in your neighborhood, of course, and with this many families, there are this many children. Why are you not teaching these lessons? Then the school would have to take a more proactive route in ensuring that happens. And this is incredibly important for young people and their identities as they're growing up, as they're maturing, coming from a different cultural and ethnic background, right? One of the of course greatest aspects of living in London is how multicultural it is.
Yeah.
But we've got to recognize that it's not a situation where the multiculturalism that is the reality of London is something that is institutionally recognized and understood and appreciated on the level of how we treat those minorities and those different people. And because of these problems, we talk about, especially in our community, we talk about young people having a crisis of identity, not understanding which identity is theirs,
Yeah.
because they have multiple languages. They speak a different language at home, a different language at school. Their
Yeah.
friends at school are very different. They behave very differently. They have different ideas to their
Yeah.
families,
Yeah.
to their cousins, etc. And that obviously creates a bit of a tension within children. And on
Mhm.
top of that, if they're then told, in a particular lesson or something that, or if Alavism isn't ever mentioned when it
Mhm.
comes to different communities, they'll suddenly go, well, that means maybe Alavism isn't a real thing, or my parents are maybe they're
Yeah.
lost in an old way of thinking or something along those lines, and that can be very dangerous and
No,
very
I
very.
100% agree with you there because, I'll just give like sort of an example from my experiences.
Mhm.
I went to primary school and secondary school in Essex, and in my year, I was kind of, the only Alavi in my year. And I'd always get my friends, like even now at uni, I'd get friends who'd ask me, what's your religion? And I'll be like Alavi, and then they don't really know what it is. And so I think, if it's on official records, it doesn't just benefit us as Alavis. I think it also, it helps people, just the whole population, to be more aware of, other kind of religions, and, recognize that there is sort of different religions that are going on. So yeah, I do definitely agree with you there.
Yeah, and especially, we've got to keep in mind the reality that we are living through a period of time where Europe is facing an increase in particular right-wing ideas, and we see that here in the UK as well, right? A lot of the sort of rise and fall of parties like UKIP was based around ideas that stigmatized people, minorities from a different background. And in particular, let's not forget that when the Brexit vote happened, a significant sort of idea used by the Vote Leave campaign was to prevent Turkey from entering the European Union because, again, they were associating people from that country with negative aspects that couldn't ever fit into society here in the UK.
Yeah.
And these ideas are fundamentally very dangerous ideas and can lead to very dangerous actions by people. Let's not forget that when the Brexit vote happened, one of those people on the right wing killed a member of parliament, a female member of parliament for the Labour Party was killed because of that polarization in ideas. And this comes a lot from an uneducation, as you said, of others as well as ourselves. Of course, we should educate ourselves and claim our own identities, but you have to educate other people as well. And you have to educate the people in these communities by saying, well, you're not the only person here, that there is no such thing as just this one particular racial or ethnic or religious identity in the UK and in Britain. And that in fact, our society is much more complex and requires much more understanding than might initially sort of come across. And to sort of show that, one way is through statistics, is to point and say, this area, these people, these are Alevi. And, do you know who that is? Do you know what they are? Well, why don't you know that? Why do you not care so much? Because they contribute as much as everyone does to society.
Definitely. And for that reason, we definitely urge, especially the younger generation, to take part in this consensus, because it definitely does mean a lot, and in the future generations, our kids and, other generations, we want the faith to carry on. There's a question from one of our viewers, Yasemin Gujola, who has asked, what should I do if my access code doesn't arrive to my home? Would you like to answer that, or do you want me to?
Yeah, well, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you can get your access code by going onto the website.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to show a video about this maybe later, or there probably are videos already online.
Yeah.
But you can get the access code by going online, entering your address, and then I think it's just your address, and then you enter a phone number, and they send you an access code to your phone, and then you can use the access code to fill out the census.
Yeah, definitely. My mum, actually, when the post arrived, she lost the letter, so I had to actually go online and get the access code online and fill out the form. So if you can't find your access code, or you've lost your letter, or you need a new access code, you can request for a new one to be sent via post, and you can also get the access code online and fill the form out online. So that's our answer to that question. There's also another viewer, Aisha Ishiri, who has asked, what happens after the 21st of March, when the consensus first date has passed, which we did kind of touch on just before, but it might be useful to kind of, go over that again. So 21st of March is the first deadline, shall we put it? And after that, if the forms are not filled out, you get warning letters sent out. And the form does need to be completed as soon as possible, because it is compulsory by law for it to be filled out. It states that on the official consensus website. And if the form is not completed, then you may have to pay a fine of up to £1,000. You can get prosecuted, and on top of that, you may have to pay court costs as well. So yes, we've repeated that. Hopefully that was useful. Ali, going back to the question that I asked, in what areas and in what ways will our recognition as Alevis benefit us? I think it's all kind of, you touched on sort of education and stuff. Would you like to say something more about like the social side of things?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
How it will benefit, you know, social life, you know, your friendship groups, for instance.
Yeah. So you know, we've got to sort of reiterate the point that you know, as a British citizen, it's we and our sort of differences are what make sort of Britain today. And people sort of are more and more aware of this, and especially when it comes to how we live our lives, the sort of things we do within our lives. Yes, we're limited at the moment because of a pandemic, but when things return to relative normality, then you expect to be able to sort of interact with people, build networks with people, and you know those networks will be important for the job prospects.
Yeah,
It can be important for, of course, your education as well. But as well as that, of course, building or just connecting with various people across the cities we live in. And what we sort of what we've found from our interventions and our activities within the community, especially with regards to the youth, is that the more someone is confident of their personal identity, the more confident they are when they interact with people, and the more likely they are to make true connections with people. I mean, so what I mean is, if I'm unsure as to my own beliefs and my own culture, right, that
yeah,
insecurity is going to affect the types of people I speak to. And then if I'm in a social situation where I'm facing a question about my past, my culture, my heritage, my religion, and I'm unsure, well, then
mhm,
suddenly that would lead to me to maybe close up and not speak as much. And that, of course, isn't something that is healthy for anyone. You know, humans are fundamentally very social beings. But to be social, you need to be confident. You need to not fear being sort of persecuted in society. And of course, no one would persecute you. But if you don't have that confidence beforehand, and if that confidence isn't reaffirmed by the society you live in, by the fact that you're recognized, then that will sort of affect those interactions and that aspect of your life. And that is sort of an important part of what we talk about, or what people talk about when they talk about integration. Now, it's not you know, just a very simple thing of integration just means behave like everyone else.
mhm,
Integration really means behave as you are, and then combine that in a way in society, and that's sort of what does happen. But for that
yeah,
to be the case, you need this confidence in your beliefs, in your ideas, in your past. And
yeah,
it is really important. And this is, you know, not just for religion, but also for ethnicity, right? And um, you know, Alevism, of course, comes underneath the religion sort of tab within the census. But we should also remember that Alevism is quite a complicated and complex identity. It's you know, it's very easy to sort of understand when you learn about Alevism that it's not just a particular thing. It's not just a religion. It's not just a culture. It's not just
yeah,
it's not just an ethnicity. It's not just a particular way of life or a philosophy. It's quite a
mhm,
complex thing. And you know, to be able to learn about something, you first need to be able to know that it exists. And to know that it exists, this is one step that you can take for that.
yeah. Thank you for that. That was really useful. Yes, I think our time is actually up. That went really quick. But before I do sort of, you know, close things off, I think it's um, oh, I think another question actually that would be useful is
Mhm.
um, to kind of, you know, give advice on is, does your kids have to take part in the census? Well, I think it's 18 plus, isn't it? If I'm not mistaken. So I think if you do go uni, you know, you should be completing the census. But also, you know, parents can complete it on behalf of the people that are in the household. So that's that's that. And yeah, touching on what you said, I think it's important for us as Alevis to get together and to, you know, declare our religion so it can be noticed and understood better in the future generations. And so yes, we do urge people to take part in census. We urge especially younger folks to help, you know, their parents fill out their forms if they do need the help, you know. And I also think it's important, you know, for parents to also kind of advise and talk about these subjects with their children more. What do you think on that?
Yeah, of course,
Mm,
the sort of first point of contact that anyone has is with their immediate family.
yeah,
Um, and obviously, it's not the case where everyone is going to have all the knowledge at one point. So,
mm,
we
yeah,
shouldn't expect our parents to give us everything because,
um,
they simply won't be able to.
yeah.
But,
I think
yeah.
it'll be good to have, the discussions about it, be able to talk about this topic more, because I feel like that's how it's, going to be passed on to the next generation, if that
Mhm.
makes sense. But yes, I think that is our time up. So I'm going to leave it there. I hope that it has been a valuable program for our dear viewers that have been watching us. Thank you for your support. And also want to thank you, Ali, for joining me today. It was a pleasure to kind of discuss this topic with you. And also want to thank our head of the IAKM and GEMIV Studios, Zainal Akdogan, as well as Ibrahim Hass and Hussein Arbir, and also the lovely Edda for helping me to organise this live tonight. Thank you, everyone.
How to complete your census. Census Day is Sunday, the 21st of March 2021. However, you can complete your census as soon as you receive your invitation pack in the post. Your pack should be with you around the 1st of March 2021. This pack is really important as it will explain how to complete your census online at www.census.gov.uk/NI, or on paper if you prefer. It should take around 10 minutes per person to complete your census. Online, go to www.census.gov.uk/NI. Select Start Census and enter the access code from your invitation pack. Answer the questions and submit when complete. On paper. Contact us by text relay on 18001 0800 328 2021 to ask for a paper household questionnaire to be sent to you. Fill in the paper form for your household. Return it to us in the free post envelope supplied.